turned our furnace on yesterday or day before yesterday, and nothing happened. The pilot light was lit and everything, and so, what do you do when that happens and it's getting ready to get cold? I called the repair guy. He came over and knelt in front of the furnace. The moment he did, I saw a switch set off. And I said, after he messed with it for a while, he said, "This thing's getting no power." And I said, "Well, does that need to be on?" He says, "Yes." So he flipped it on, and sure enough, next thing he said is, "That'll be $150.
Price of an education.
Well, I said, "I fixed it. You ought to be paying me." So that's something worth remembering next year. So I don't know how that switch got off, but it did. But anyway, this talk today comes directly from, what do they say before movies? This story is factual or based on factual information or something. This is. It's one of those. I'm not lying to you today. I normally do, but not today. So toss, salvage, or keep. This is a question that was raised many, many times over the last couple of weeks. The moving process has been very interesting. We look at each object in the church, whether it's a desk, chair, silk plant, or piece of office equipment, with this question in mind: toss, salvage, or keep. And Marilyn will understand the typewriter up the IBM Selectric. We had that in the office for all these years. I don't know where it came from. Pat remembers it. I'm afraid to type on those things because they don't self-correct. So it's like a dog that might bite. You never know, if it's going to. But we debated on whether to keep it or not. Decided to let it go. And the one in the bottom right, this kind of brought up some memories. It's an antique Underwood. And my grandmother gave me one of those. That's what I started writing on my spiritual stuff. I have a file called Spiritual Works, which will never see the light of publication because it was so long ago. But I used that thing and really enjoyed it. There's something about old things that I reconnect with, and it just feels good. I'm saying that because I'm getting older all the time, so I'm hoping that anyway. So that's why that's there. So toss means Mesa County landfill. You all have been out there. You're all familiar with that particular scene or one like it. Salvage is Goodwill or some other charity. So it goes to good, and I'm really impressed with what they would take over there. We didn't take junk to Goodwill. We took things that were usable, but they didn't refuse anything, so it's just something good to keep in mind. And I'm going to look at my own house in a slightly different way as a result of that. Keep is our new place. Everything comes here that we kept, and so we're having to go from 10,000 feet to 1,400 square feet, and we've done pretty good, I think, with it. But it's a very good exercise to look at things and say, do I still need this? Do I still want this thing in my life? And so often we don't, but we're not quite ready to let it go. And that's an interesting thing about us. So we're more likely to rent a storage facility than, or put it in our garage. You have a 2 or 3 car garage so you can put your stuff in it. That not your car, but your stuff, So we do that. So it's funny when doubts have risen, but the decision to toss or salvage is made, how natural items look resting in the landfill or in the Goodwill bin. This happened when we pushed that couch that was downstairs into the landfill, and suddenly it looked like that's where it belonged. It looked like it has a new life now. But it's again well, I know why we didn't throw that away. It was being used by support groups, I think. But there are things in our lives that we do that with, that we hang on to, that they're probably past their useful time for us. But it occurs to me that there is a mental emotional cleansing exercise embedded in this moving process. During this move, I encountered several people where the topic of religion was raised. That was kind of interesting, not something I expected. I noticed in others strongly assumed, unquestioned religious views that I once held. So people were curious that would come in to move things or do whatever they were doing outside of our church community. And they would say, "What's this unity thing? What is this? What do you guys think or believe?" And so I would try to give them the elevator version of, in 5 seconds or less, what we are. I'm getting pretty good at that, but you can always tell their eyes kind of glaze over, and they're not quite here yet. They may be sometime, and maybe never. It doesn't matter. But what was interesting is when I see that happen, I was there also. I was in that place, that belief system at one time, and it just makes me realize how far I've come, and I'm not saying that in any kind of arrogant way, but how different I view the world now than I did at one time. I always went by what the authority that was standing up at the pulpit or coming from the Bible or whatever. I would always go by what they said. If I had a question, I would ask somebody, or I would look it up in script, try to find a scripture that supported whatever it was I was looking for. And you often do, and it's a wonderful tool for that. But the point is, I didn't trust myself. And what I have come to is I don't grapple with that question anymore. Am I a valid source? I am, because the kingdom of God is within us. Everybody hears voices. They're not all sane and not all, correct voices. Some of them are rather strange. But I trust the one that speaks to me. It's me. It's me at the deepest level. It's who I am. I'm trying to get more familiar with that all the time. And that's the voice that we want to learn to listen to. It's the voice of Spirit, the voice of God. It's the voice of your soul, the voice of you. And so what I'm saying is, here I'm coming from that perspective, and I'm talking to someone who is in a world where the parameters of their thinking are set by the religious concepts that they're involved in, and they don't think outside of that. They're afraid to think outside of that, and they're afraid to think outside of it because they're told to be afraid to think outside of it. This is the way. This is the one way, the one and only way. I don't feel that way. I feel like they're as much on the path as I am. We're not in the same place. I was at a party years ago. I think I shared this. There was a newspaper reporter there, and she was asking me about reincarnation, about what I thought about it as a unity minister. And I just told her a little bit about how I viewed that, and it was a little different than how I view it now. But she ended up saying, well, it doesn't really matter. We all end up in the same place anyway. And she was a Catholic, coming from a Catholic perspective. And I don't think all Catholics think we all end up in the same place, but she made that statement just to kind of make me feel okay, I guess. I don't know what she was doing. But I said to her, we're not in the same place now. What makes you think we'd end up in the same place? I said, I think it's more freedom of choice and all of that. And I do believe that. We're not in the same place now. There's a group of us that are kind of traveling together. We have similar ideas, but even we don't all agree. I don't know why, but we don't always. But that's just human nature. We all come from our own experience. We're trying to weigh everything out according to how we have learned to see the world and see ourselves. And so I always appreciate that aspect in everybody. I also appreciate the fact that I grew up in a traditional approach, because when somebody comes to me and talks about that and tells about a struggle they're having with it, like the woman that was just devastated because she lost a baby, and the priest told her that that baby was in purgatory or someplace because it had never been christened. And I'm thinking, I understand why he would say that, but to me, that's one of the most cruel things anybody could say. A person in authority. And that woman lived with that conversation for 20 some years. And so just my talking to her, saying that's not, probably how it works, and that you don't have anything to be afraid or ashamed of, or to fear, that your child is, I'm sure, in very good hands and a very good place. But that's the one thing I have against religion. That's what gets my hackles up sometimes, because in that sense, it does a lot of damage. It does a lot of good too. And I try to focus on that side of it. Because if a person thinks that Jesus is going to return someday and save them, and that makes them happy, that's fine. I just don't happen to believe that. If he was that, he would have done it the first time. And he didn't, because I don't think he thought he was even that. But there's no going back to our belief, to our views. Most of these views now rest in my own personal landfill or salvage bin. That is my personal religious views. I don't say this to be critical or arrogant, but to simply make note of my own process of change. I can no more go back than I would attempt to retrieve tossed items that no longer have value. And that's I think aren't we always walking along, weighing the past? Things pop up. Maybe we're going along just fine, and maybe we lose a loved one. And it brings up all this stuff. What are they going through? What does this mean? Maybe it's something that just knocks us off our feet, and we kind of revert back to old ways of thinking. And we, find that maybe we need a God that, as the little girl said, the God with skin on. Sometimes we revert to that. And so we'll do that a lot. We'll go back to the trash can and pick out a piece of paper and unfold it and try to use it again. But the good news is we will probably do that and then understand why we don't embrace it anymore. That's part of the growing process, is we keep evaluating and reevaluating where we've been and where we're going. Sometimes what we call new thought, or this kingdom within idea, we don't know how to put it into practice where it feels emotionally correct, when we're faced with some problem that we don't know how to deal with. It looks like an external problem. How would going within help? It just seems so impractical. And this is what I think happened with Jesus when he left, when he passed, when he died, that the people didn't know how to answer the questions that he was teaching based on the mystical awareness, that it had no practical value. And that's why the whole movement, the Jesus movement, goes back to this, well, he's coming back. I can understand that. He's going to come back and save us. I can grasp that. I can't understand how being under the pressure of the Roman Empire and Jewish leadership and all that stuff, how that could be of any practical value. I still have to get up and go about my daily business, and do the things I do, and nothing seems to change. So it's easy to fall back on that, and I think collectively that's what the Jews did. And we call them Jewish Christians also, those who were trying to convert or converting to thinking that Jesus was the Messiah. That was a whole different group of people. But they went back after he left to the old way of thinking, and they're still there. That's what Christianity is. It's a revision of Judaism, based on all the same ideas. And if you look at it very closely, you'll see that. But it's called a new covenant just because it's a new model. Now the Savior is not obeying the law, it's believing in Jesus as your personal Savior. So it's the same idea. It's something out there is going to be make your life better. Early metaphysicians often referred to race consciousness. I think of this as culturally programmed group thinking. The field of religion is particularly prone to establishing rigid parameters of thought, probably to avoid giving the appearance of instability. That's a cardinal sin. Church is unstable. It can't happen. However, instability can be the beginning of an entirely new experience in thought. Emerson said, "People wish to be settled only as far as they are unsettled. Is there any hope for them?" I've always liked that. Only because I'm so familiar with being unsettled that I'm glad somebody else gets it too. It's like isn't that part of, am I the only one that's unsettled from time to time? I guess, no, good. So I came to the right place. But I like that, and I like that a person who was such an intellectually and spiritually brilliant individual grasped that, came up with that, and said, it's not our job here to become settled. We are to keep our mind open to change, open to new ideas, open to new revelation, because the soul is infinite. And I like to compare that to the exploration of space. I've used this before, but what is space? We don't know what it is. We know it's infinite. We keep going further and further out. We have telescopes that are taking incredible photographs of things we don't even understand, what they're doing or what they are. The scientists, of course, are busy trying to explain it all because that's their job. And you talk about people looking for stability. Science wants to be credible, so they want their ideas to be correct, and we all do. But what happens is science is revised about every 10 minutes, especially when we're looking at space exploration. Just when we think we know something, suddenly we don't. What is it they're calling black matter, no, dark matter. Saying that makes up like 90% of the universe, or a huge amount. And then you ask the next question, well, what's dark matter? And they say, we don't know. So you don't know what 80, 90% of the universe is, and yet you're telling us about this Big Bang thing, and you're telling us all this stuff. I mean, if we don't know that much about it, how could we, all of the theories that are come up with, they're frameworks, and they will be revised. Religion doesn't do that. It comes up with a framework and says, we're sticking to this. We're going to stay with this. This is truth. And, if somebody comes up with something different, which is why they do not like critical scholarship, because critical scholarship is always challenging the dogma. And science doesn't like critical scholarship. They will fight it. And if a career is built on the Big Bang Theory and, in 5 years we've discovered absolutely that's wrong, there will be people that fight it because they wrote textbooks about it. And that means you got to rewrite the textbooks. Somebody's always saying that, this will rewrite the textbooks. Nobody wants that's in the text. Well, the textbook business wants it. Scientists don't. And religionists absolutely don't. The textbook that's written is that black one, the Bible. It's the one that never changes. And I find that very interesting, a very interesting perspective, because there is no one way to look at anything in the Bible. You can ask any question and you can find different answers to support that view, whatever it is. And it helps to understand the culture and the thinking behind how this stuff all came about. I have found that to be a very helpful thing to look at. But even biblical scholars, they'll say most scholars think or most agree with this or that, but there's always new stuff. They're always discovering new stuff. Biblical scholarship, critical scholarship, is very slow. Archaeology, it's very slow. It's like you make a discovery and 20 years later you'll make some other, some advance in that thinking. So we don't want to get in a hurry with that kind of thing. Space is the same way. But the technology is going so fast and taking these incredible photographs. I can't even believe some of the things that we're looking at. And then you see Mars, the Mars rover thing. It travels all over the desert up there on Mars. It looks like Grand Junction. It does truly remind me of that. Some of them are so bizarre they don't remind me of anything. But this area it reminds me of the Middle East, and it reminds me of Mars. So I guess we're already out there, aren't we? While I look forward to getting through this church move, the unsettled aspect of it has been very invigorating, and it really has. This move represents more to me probably than anybody in this room. I know it represents a lot to you, Pat, but it represents as a minister, because I came here. This place was in existence long, it was built when I was 4 years old, the church we were in. So there's a lot of history that took place there. And as a minister, I step into that. I've done it with a number of churches. And when you do that, you step into history. You step into a history that you're not connected with. And Pam has been the wife of the minister for 18 years, long history. And you know what that's like to step into it. So we reincorporated. We made our church into from Unity Church to Independent Unity. That was a change, and I felt good to me that here's a new beginning. And so now we're changing the whole building. And the building is like a body. It's like that body has passed away, and we want to let it go, and we want to have a service for it in time. And recognize this baby, this new birth that has occurred here, that we're in this. And we're starting all over. All of the stuff we've been through in that past building, we don't carry it with us. We don't want to carry it with us. We remember it, we utilize it, we appreciate what it is and all of that. But in that sense, it's represented a transformation for me. And it's been very interesting just to watch me think about it, to observe what goes on. And it's, we attach a lot to our residents, to our buildings, and to our bodies, that's because that's where we live right now. And there's more to us than all of that. There's more to this ministry than the physical location. We're going out all over the world. I think that's really incredible. But it's a good thing to shake things up once in a while, and in a positive way. And it doesn't always feel positive. That's the thing about it. And sometimes we'll say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't know how many times through this whole sale of the properties and the purchase of this property and all the things that we did, I found myself saying, I wish somebody else was doing this. I don't really want to do this. It just seemed overwhelming at times. And so we have a tendency to say, I don't want to do that, and go back. But you go back even one step, and you'll say, I don't want to do this either. I'm going to go forward. So you keep moving forward in your thought, in your belief system, and just explore it all. And what's interesting is there will be no stone unturned. Scripture says that. And I think I understand what that means. If you leave a stone unturned, life is going to send you back to that stone at some point. Some situation, some person, something is going to kind of gently take you back to that stone and say, you need to turn that one over too. And you're going to say, but that one's been there forever and it's sacred and I don't want to touch it. And it'll say, okay. And you'll go off again and it'll turn you around and bring you back and say, are you ready now? Just keep doing that until we start dealing with our stuff. But the good thing about that, and I'm not thinking of that as an outside force doing that, I'm thinking of it as the soul. The soul is always looking for its own vibration, its own level of truth, what it is. And if there's something in your life that's out of harmony with that, it brings us back until we get that in harmony, till we somehow resolve whatever it is that's going on. And it's just, we can't escape the things we fear, is what it comes down to, or can't escape the things we're trying to avoid. Job said, the thing I fear most has come upon me. And I always say it has to. The thing we fear most has to come upon us, so we'll stop fearing it. We'll look at it and fix it. We'll get past it. And change always does that. It always stirs the thing and causes us to confront the thing we fear most. And if you don't understand that you're fearing that thing, and that's why you're reacting, instead of treating it like something that's coming at you that you have no control over, you say, why am I fearing this? And you begin to look at it maybe in a different way. But it's kind of interesting. Spiritual growth is an inside-out process. We often get so comfortable with our mental and emotional furniture that we fail to notice the wear that has set in. We may find ourselves going along to get along with our culturally programmed group thinking. Has anybody done that before? I think, again, that's one of those things. We all want to get along with everybody, and we don't always say what's really on our minds. And I had that experience in this process too. In one recent conversation, a man wanted to know where Jesus fits into our religious thinking. Rather than give him a standard unitary response, I just said, our focus is on where we fit in. Do you believe Jesus when he said the kingdom of God is within you? He said, of course. I then said, that's where Jesus fits in. He told us where to look for the very thing we're looking for. And I don't know that he got it. He was very interested in what we are, and because he was a minister of another denomination. I was surprised how interested he was. But I just decided, I know what he's looking for, how he's wanting me to respond. He's wanting me to say Jesus fits in our religion just like he does yours. And that's not true. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to maybe light a fire under somebody that has an influence over other people, but I doubt it. I didn't do it for that reason. I just did it because I was tired and I didn't want to argue. So here it is. So I sensed that he appreciated something new to think about, to consider, whether he would do some tossing, some salvaging, or keeping of his own. So that happens sometimes. How do you explain when somebody asks you, what's this unity thing? How do you respond to them? You try to come up with some answer that will satisfy them, but you also probably know that no answer will satisfy them. When the Jehovah's Witnesses show up on our front door, I wish I could talk to them. I wish I could have a good debate with them or a good discussion. Their single purpose is not to understand what I think. It's to get me to think like they do. And that's the difference. In unity, we tend to allow people to be who they are, to come from the place they're at this moment, knowing that we don't necessarily agree with it, we don't accept it. But that's one of the problems. And see, I commend these people for going out among the wolves, knowing that they're going to meet a lot of resistance. But if somebody's goal is to come into my life, to change my mind, to think like them, or to think like their church or whatever, our conversation won't last very long. Because I've been there, done that, and for some reason, Spirit said, you're not going to stay here. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep asking new questions. And it's led me to this place, so that's why it means so much to me that this is my path. And as I've said before, I don't care what our congregation is here in terms of if we don't flood out over into the streets, that used to be my goal, because that's how I was trained to think in seminary. Build the biggest possible church you can so you'll have a huge audience and you'll spread the light and all of that. Well, I understand that. And you'll pay your bills and all the things that go along with church business. That all makes sense. But I've got the biggest audience I've ever had in my life now. It's because of technology, because of the ability to reach out, beyond these four walls. So I love the intimacy that we have in this group. And yes, I hope it grows. I hope we have to sell this place and buy another one someday. But I want it to be natural. I don't want it to be a forced thing that we're trying to build a church. That's the mentality we've always had. Do this thing, do that thing, advertise, do all the things you need to do to get people to come into your church. Well, these huge mega churches have been described as a mile wide and an inch deep, and they're talking about the spiritual mentality, the understanding that goes along with it. I'm a part of this huge group. It's cool. I can tell everybody in business, they'll. I joined became part of a chamber of commerce in one of the town, Evergreen, I think it was, that we were in. Because everybody said if you go get involved, more people will come to your church. Well, they don't. You go to the Chamber of Commerce thing, they say, what church are you with? They say Unity. Well, you'll never see them because they're all with some other church, and that's the one that's important to them. And I don't criticize that. I'm just saying I don't want to build this church by rubbing shoulders with all the right people. You are the right people.
Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in Independent Unity, and have a wonderful week.